When it is coming, it is doing. And now, GN Bank Kofabaye, Eye Ura, Dr. Paa Kwesi Nduom, Ekokoshia, former President John Dramani Mahama. Na obibe bisa se, adentina Paa Kwesi Nduom, Ekoshia JM. Nienti oko JM nche nyina se, osre na da, osre no opana chao. Se otimi wini 2024 abato ya ombo modi anyeden en release ni GN Bank license na man na onko so a on operate 2019 de mo ho ena yeti se GN Bank abanwe ya collapse no enzampi ema thousands of Ghanaian youths eye unemployed na e ka se aban ne be provide enjuma all these people are GM Bank go omotitifie up till now are buying compensate your money ade ayare hosem te se de be ya ndwuma besan bagana ntino na Dr. Paa Kwesi Nduom ade adesre de ko 2 GM anim se osre no obabaka on rebook in the license no emma mumma yenti Dr. Paa Kwesi Nduom
the so-called the most money locked up from different companies in all of this. So the impact has been big, huge, negative, and we've been digging ourselves up from that. But very specifically, we wanted to give you a petition, which I will explain it just briefly. And we've also made it as brief as we can. So I want to give you this petition. Okay. And this petition, simply we believe that when you take a look at it, you will understand the reasons why we believe that anyone who will occupy the seat of the presidency should take a look at all of what had happened with the so-called financial sector review and cleanup and so on and so forth. So people say that there was a financial sector cleanup, and they also say that they required people to bring new capital. I would say ask the entire banking system, how many banks brought new money into the system? And you'll find there was very little. Many people restructured their balance sheet and through going about to revalue the positions, came up with additional capital, if you will, but very little new capital. Some that came from outside brought some new capital, but very little capital got on the table, most of which was also taken away by the haircuts from the bonds. So the system is today facing a lot of stress, but our particular specific situation is this. We built a bank from the very beginning, saying that we wanted to be the people's bank, to be everywhere, to serve the ordinary Ghanaian. So from the word go, we said we're going to build at least 300 branches and serve at least 1 million customers. And that we will be where any major market is in this country and provide services across. So we built not just these 300 branches. In actual fact, we built 305. And we put in the technology network so that no matter where you would be, whether it's in Wedana or Sisala or Pusiga or wherever, that you could access your bank account from anywhere. Or you could also decide that I'm in Avrongo. I want to go to Kumasi or to Makola to buy some supplies, but I don't want to carry cash, so I don't lose it. So you go to the branch, you tell them, here's my money, I'm going to Kumasi Edum, I'll collect my money. So they'll just go safely, pick up their money, buy their supplies and go home. So we built this network, which then became the focal point for economic development in many of the areas. Because now, if I know a specific man in Wale Wale who sold building products. Before we got there, his business was small because he couldn't drive through all these bad roads to go and deliver supplies, go and collect cash. But with our system in place, anyone, whether they're in Samoba or wherever else, will go to a branch, deposit money into his account. Once he verifies it's sitting in Wale Wale, he will then send the supplies to them, and his business was thriving. Now the business has gone down. Okay. So we feel that collapsing a 300 branch financial entity is inimical to the economic interest of the country. So whether it even belongs to us or belongs to someone else, it is something that needs to be there. Secondly, since our license was revoked and left a number of those places, nobody has gone to those locations. Nobody has decided that I'll go to, they are not here, so I'll go to Willency. They are not here, so I'll go to wherever it is. Nobody's gone there. And so there's nothing happening in those places. We had thousands of employees. Those employees don't have jobs. And because of the banking sector problem that showed up, who is going to give a branch manager a job today? So those people are jobless. And some of them are doing some really menial jobs with the education that they have. So that didn't happen. And there's a problem there. We also built quite a sophisticated digital money system. So some may have heard about a system called Pay Global and others that we built with your app. You can do all sorts of things. That system obviously is collapsed. Now, we consider that we built one of the first, people talk about interoperability. We did this, more than 6 years ago. And that system, it doesn't work now. Okay? Made a huge investment in that area. It is not working. So we've spent a lot of money, a lot of investment in the system that today is not doing anything for anyone. So why did this happen? It happened because quietly we had been the entity, our whole group, that was funding Ghanaian contractors. There are a number of them. I know you know some of them. We put them in business. We finance their contracts. So when former President Kufuor took over, they decided, and I was there, they decided that they weren't going to give advance money to contractors, that you should go and get your own money. And when your project gets to a certain phase, the professionals, technical people will go and take a look, certify the project, they pay you, then you move on to the next phase. If they don't pay you in 90 days, you get to charge interest on it. And that was a system that was put in way back in 2001 or so, because it was said that people would get advances and do all manner of things with the money and not do the work. So up until 2017, cumulatively, we had financed up to 14 billion Ghana cedis worth of contracts, cumulatively. So that's the impact that we were having on the system. Bridges, roads, school buildings, and so on and so forth. Now, in 2008, when we started asking for our money, what we said was there at that time was 1.8 billion Ghana cedis. Well, 2018 was 1.8 billion Ghana cedis. And this came about because when the new administration took over in 2017, it decided to freeze all contracts and said they were going to review them and reject whichever ones that they would reject. Well, they did the review. None of our projects was rejected. As a matter of fact, they gave even more contracts to a number of the contractors that we had pre-financed. But they would pay the new contracts and leave ours, right? We said, just give us 300 million Ghana cedis of contracts, work done and certified. And if they had done that, none of our companies would have suffered any challenges. They didn't. So Ministry of Finance said, go and get an independent person to audit these projects, which we did. When the independent person did the audit, they rather came up with an amount of 2.2 billion Ghana cedis, right? This money is what today has come up to over 7.1 billion. Now, knowing all of this, the governor who is there sat with me and said, look, why don't you accept to be reclassified from a universal bank to a savings and loans company, knowing that for savings and loans, the minimum requirement is only 15 million. Okay, 15 million. So do that, continue with your business, and then when monies are paid, then you can come back and request to be brought back to universal banking status. I went back to the directors, said, okay, let's do this. So January 2019, they give us a letter saying, here are 6 conditions that you must satisfy over a 6-month period. Now go and become a savings and loans company. So we went and started working. After 6 months, we prepared this report. It's a transition report for the 6-month period. We gave it to them in July. All of the requirements that they gave us had been satisfied. And we said our capital at that point was about 200 million Ghana cedis. Now remember, savings and loans, you require 15 million, right? So imagine my shock when I'm sitting in Chicago doing some work, and in August I'm told that they have taken our license. So under what pretext? Under what condition? What happened? Okay, because this report we gave to them, nobody called us to say, come and let's talk page 5, what you put there is wrong. Or page 6, there's something that we don't understand. Nothing. And I've been showing this to everybody, that we went through and did our work and said everything was okay. And indeed, the people had started coming back to us, giving us new money.
And even say utie doctor utie Dr. Paa Kwesi Nduom ye pa. Ono ankasa oye bank no wura no. Ono ankasa nim ne enti ayegu ne bank. Most now it was GM Bank. And I'm money ne din komo na mo se we no a problem. Ye ne GM savings and loans. Nipa na accept ya ne GM savings and loans. Or why I see I get a license of freedom. Abra wa mfumo brabiaso. This is what the genesis of the story. What to say? Bank of Ghana. And also we were buying with my bag one time because this is the reason until I go GM Bank. We need to wedding. Okay? Okay, so we say I buying with three wedding and near my business all the checking. I'm telling you. She anka ye kapra anka Paa Kwesi Nduom oni asemu. Omo ano mo ya adwuma GM Bank. From the manager to the last person in the company, the cleaner of the bank, omo nyina ye unemployed fee. Government our promise in juma no wabegu juma. In fact, our who sɛ na wo abusuafoɔ bɛɛ 3 na ɔmo yɛ adwuma wɔ GM Bank a ɛna ɔbɛti nea mi kan ase. Let's continue.
The old OPEC in Washington, which is now DFC, we went there and signed an agreement for $20 million, okay, to bring in and put into the business. All of that went away because of this action.
Presenting this petition to us. It's a matter that has engaged our own attention, and I have made several pronouncements about it in the past. I believe that the action of this government was a knee-jerk reaction to a situation that should have been faced with reasonableness, level head, and a calm disposition. Professor Soludo says that the ownership of capital matters, and that the ethnicity of capital is real, and that every country's financial and banking sector is part of its national security architecture. And so I do believe that indigenous participation in the financial sector is critical. And the current lopsided situation where we have a dominance of foreign banks in the financial sector is not the best that Ghana should have. And so you have a lot of empathy on this side. The issues with the financial sector began as under our watch. We knew there were liquidity issues and all that, but it needed a calm head to unravel it and deal with it. And so we went into putting in the necessary legislation, including the bill for guaranteeing deposits and so on and so forth, so that we could solidify the legislation in the financial sector and then deal with it, when we came back with a renewed mandate. It's not the first time we've done a banking sector cleanup. Under FinSap, we had struggling banks, and we dealt with it, and the banks came out stronger after FinSap than before. And you remember we created a non-performing assets recovery trust that took, the toxic debt and dealt with it, recovering those debts. In this case, I have said before that banks like yours, GN Bank and UT Bank and all the other banks that were closed, were indigenous banks that were dealing mostly with small and medium enterprises. And everybody knows that in the banking sector, that is the risky end of the market. And so definitely if there's going to be problems with liquidity, it's going to come from that group. And so I believe government should have handled it differently. If we had continued in government, this would not have happened. I mean, we must look at the social impact too. Throwing out about 10,000 banking sector professionals. Some of them are bakers today, others are Uber drivers and all that. After all the training and education they got. I mean, there are best practices that anybody could look at. I remember the Bank of Scotland or something during the financial crisis was about to collapse with massive consequences for the British economy. And so what did Britain do? They took equity in the bank, liquefied the bank, and the bank, returned to profitability in a short while and took the equity back, paid off the loans. We could have handled it that way. And in any case, who says that all banks require a certain capital reserve? And that's why we are talking about a tiered banking system, because banks exist for different purposes. They have different objectives, and they cater to different segments of the market. Not every bank needs to be a Class A bank with capital reserves of 400 million cedis. There are small banks like, Wells Women Banking and all those, and other banks that cater for specific segments of the market, and they don't need 400 million cedis capital because they're giving small loans like 1,000 cedis, 5,000 cedis, 2,000 cedis. They're not lending to the Unilevers of this world. And so I do think that government was hasty in what it did. If you look at the criteria that was used, I mean, it didn't fit. It was not a one-size-fits-all. so, yes, like you said, a lot of these banks had also financed government suppliers and contractors, and government owed them, and they owed the banks. And so even if you did an offset of what was owed, then probably the liquidity issue would have been resolved. But government says, no, our contract with those people has nothing to do with you. We are dealing with you as banks, and so it's your business to recover that money. But how would they recover that money if you don't pay the contractors to pay them?
And that was the conversation. We and a conversation between ex-president John Dramani Mahama and the CEO of GN Bank, Dr. Paa Kwesi Nduom. Me say, who person who's buying with 3 more dimpa? These are some of the things. John Mahama edged to Muse. Na GN Bank no. There were problems with it. But we will have a way of handling it. That's what JM said. Once was an example say, and your bank beyond a better capital like 400 million, 500 million, and your bank beyond a better capital. No? There will be small banks, there will be big banks. So why will you come and say that bank will face challenges waiting in free? And say, or think an amount to us why? There is no way, there is no way, GM Bank and Kobe. Kobe Green said, you see, at the back government went now and we find GM Bank or when say GM Bank, a bank employee thousands of youth. Me say the whole Ghana. Baby, only one more be kwa wunya GM Bank branch ho. Imagine, say every constituency na nipa 35 krane ya adwuma onoma. Imagine, say this region biawo yama say 20 district na GM Bank branches no ewo district na say region no mo be fa. Imagine, omo nyina adwuma hwere omo. Sa na wa bank branch no so. It is really sad. And say, what you mean say Dr. Paa Kwesi Nduom na niya bripa open a bank and a bank. Once they work as a my way vino. They won't mind him. This is the real definition of wickedness or mufino. They won't give him the license. What they know how about John Mahama who say what minya to me now. He should do anything possible and then what? Get the license back to him. Now we're hope. Youth be brave if comedy they all survived on GM Bank. And then omunyina then etitifie adwuma bia ne ho. It's a whole lot. Entino Dr. Paa Kwesi Nduom kwashia John Mahama conversation na me bochre no ene ekoso. Within the King Fantastic